As Jason said, I live in Middlemarch. It's my personal paradise, and that's a shot of the sort of place I live. We're increasingly told by the visitors in the area that come and do the Otago Central Rail Trail how beautiful and how special the area I live in is. It's very rich in history, it's rich in scenery, and it's very rich in space. There aren't many of us out there. But it's not particularly economically wealthy. And that's most of us have income streams related to farming, and you need three factors to work in line there, and that's the dollar, the commodity prices, and the weather. And unfortunately, they're not working in tune particularly well in the last few seasons. So while I don't take many holidays, I'm busy in the quiet season on the farm, and he's busy on my quiet season. You almost don't need to go have a holiday if people continuously come and tell you how good the place you live is and give you that positive reinforcement. And so that's made me question, what really makes us happy? Do we need all those holidays and all those trips and things to make us happy? So that's why the measure of happiness and other unattainable goals. I've decided to talk on that. And right from the start I've failed because, as someone much wiser than me once said, those that go looking for happiness will never find it. And so I'm just going to look at some observations of people I know in my life and how I think we can go forward as a country. As a parent, I often hear myself doing exactly what you never want to do and uttering what your mother said to your children. I was one of 5 children, 4 of us were under 4, and so the demands on my mum were pretty tough at times. And I can hear her saying when my children ask for things, saying, you do not need, you want. We've all heard that before. And just to give some perspective, my mother was born in the 1920s. She had lived through a World Depression and a World War before she was 21. In fact, I think VE Day was her 21st birthday. She was very well educated, but she was content and happy to read her way around the world. She didn't travel much like we do now. She sewed our clothes, she cooked, she didn't assemble food. Quite a distinct difference. And she gave up a professional life to look after us. Her life had a balance, and she was a very peaceful lady. In a world driven by marketers, this is a really cruel slide, but in a world driven by marketers trying to sell us what we do not need, but they need us to want, and the Rubik's Cube, I mean, what was the purpose of it, really? Even those with much, like you and I, and if you don't think you have much, the fact that you know about this means you've got access to technology that a lot of people don't have access to, then we can all still feel lacking. Not only is it the marketeers that try and influence our state of need and therefore unhappiness, we willingly try and measure ourselves against others quite often, and Andrew did that in his talk, where we look at scales. Now, and they're often against people we actually don't have much time for or willingness to be like. Now, it won't, you've seen me here now, it won't actually come as any shock that I don't personally try and compare myself to Anna Kournikova, Rachel Hunter, nor Lady Di. I'm not very good at tennis, although I can't get a photo. I couldn't find a photo of Anna Kournikova playing tennis, funnily enough. Rachel Hunter is a model, and I'm definitely not. And I'm thankfully still alive, and Lady Di isn't. But I actually have to admit to having a Lady Di haircut at one stage in my life. But here we are, we put ourselves up against the OECD country. You'll see the headlines. We've slipped down to 20th on the OECD. How many people actually know what OECD stands for? It's Organisation for Economic and Cooperation and Development. But who actually even then knows the countries that are in those in that scale, and what we're comparing ourselves to half the time. And yet that's how we judge ourselves, and we feel bad economically or otherwise. So marketers may drive us to want, but equally governments drive us to need, to earn, so that they can increase their taxes, pay for the medicine, the education, but also some of their own pet projects. And so cynically, both the marketers and the governments could be seen to be in cohorts, driving us to want more and to feel inferior from where we are. Yet, when I look at the images in the world of and its people, as long as literally the bare necessities of life are met, and that's shelter, food and water, there are wonderful examples of happy, content people. And they're often on those intrepid journey programs where you go to darkest Africa, if we're still allowed to say that, Mongolia or Bolivia or whatever. And they're very happy, content people with nothing, very little compared to what we have. Mass media like television have in many ways made us less content. And I know my children wonder why they didn't get a car and a big party when they turned 16, like you see on these terrible TV programs of kids in America and England. Yet it's the same mass media that can also make us feel that we've got a lot compared to others. So, you know, and I start on the pretext that I live in paradise, whether that be Middlemarch, Dunedin, in fact this whole province and this island. Visitors often confirm that to me. Yet we have one of the lowest income rates in New Zealand, in Dunedin, average incomes. And by many measures we are poor, if you want to take those dollar standards. But wealth is a relative thing. If you don't need for much, that is, want for much, then perhaps we are wealthy. Happy face. If we are content to live as I am in a world less judged by money and income, as long as, again, above that subsistence level, but more in terms of quality of life, then we can be happy. Now, and take some examples, and it may be how long it takes to get to a beach, how few people are in the kilometre of the beach that you're in. It may be that you can walk down the street holding your head up and looking at faces and knowing you're going to find one friendly face that you actually know. Or it may be going to one of those wonderful viewing points that we have in Dunedin and really knowing that you can own that by yourself and no one else will be there necessarily. They're not overcrowded. So those sort of things, measures, we're a really rich city. And if I was technologically able, and it would be really neat, something else to do, is a blog about how good we feel about our city, because the same reinforcement I get from the rail trail is about where I live would be a really good measure of us sharing that between ourselves. But if we go back to my mother and the balance she had, I believe we have an innate need to be productive at various levels of our basic needs. She was a sewer and a cook. Others are gardeners. And I've got people created in my cafe a vegetable garden, a very simple veggie garden. But it's amazing how people start and talk about that. And certainly in the last 2 years with the recession and everything else, people were going back to those sort of things. And I often share herbs and take and give away samples from that. And I think that's many of the happy people I know enjoy growing food or producing it or making clothes, something that they can see and enjoy themselves and moreover be seen to be productive but also to share it. So I think that's another innate part of that sharing thing. Most of us choose to live in Dunedin because we instinctively feel for all those qualities. If we wanted to run our lives by dollars, we wouldn't be living in Dunedin. Yet we're beset by a world model that failed in the 1920s and it's recently failed, as Andrew talked about. And yet we're going to continue to use that model, or are we? If in a world where the happiness has got less to do with the dollar and more to do with being able to see the good in the world and the chance to produce something and to share it. So how do we create that? Now, we all know that MasterCard ad. And here's my spin on it. So being as big as America, it's pretty big, but that's not the right picture. Being as big as America. We're more than 1 in 3, that's 81 million US adults currently live with one or more types of cardiovascular disease. Do we want to compare ourselves to that? Being on it as sunny as the Gold Coast, and this is seriously off a tanning thing on the Gold Coast. I haven't just chosen Sports Illustrated photos tonight for the men. Being as sunny as the Gold Coast, skin cancer rates is the highest in the world and 4 times that of the USA and Canada. These are sort of standards we could change our views to. I couldn't help resist putting that slide in. You're not going to get that in Dunedin. But, you know, being able to hear... Being able to hear a bellbird sing in your garden, priceless. So what is my message today? Well, it's to work out what you value and measure in the world and how you do it, and is like to make you happier and more content and feel fulfilled. And I think we're actually at that crux in time where we don't have to say, let's get back to normal. We can say, don't worry about what the government has to do. They can do what they do. But we can say as a people, we're going to have different values. And we can do those and lead that on to other ideas. And maybe working with poorer people, because I do think sharing things is often a better way of doing it, or teaching other people how to garden or do whatever. But I think we're at a real opportunity at the moment to be a happy people by not accepting the dollar value as the mark for everything.